quarter of its normal output. Our Arab Affairs editor Alan Johnston has the details.
Iraq's power network is in a dire state, largely on account of years of bad management and corruption. It always delivers a poor service, and now there's been a really major outage. The capital, Baghdad, and provinces further south have been particularly badly affected. Local media reports suggested that the problem was caused by a fault in an important power line. In the past, anger over electricity cuts in the fierce heat of summer has fed discontent, which has led to street protests.
Alan Johnston reporting. You're listening to the World News from the BBC. Israeli warplanes have carried out a raid on Gaza after militants there launched incendiary balloons that sparked fires across the border. The Israelis said they targeted a weapons manufacturing site used by the Hamas militant group. There were no reports of casualties on either side. Organisers of the Tokyo Olympics say they could still ban all spectators if the coronavirus situation in Japan worsens. They decided last month that venues can have up to 10,000 domestic fans, but now they say that decision could be reviewed. Other options include reducing the limit to 5,000 and banning spectators from evening events. The Games begin in 3 weeks' time. The German Chancellor Angela Merkel meets the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson today. It's expected to be her last visit to Britain before she stands down in September. James Landale reports.
Angela Merkel may be standing down later this year, but she's packing her final months in office with trips abroad. Today, that means her 22nd official visit to Britain. The German Chancellor will meet another woman who understands longevity in office when she has a private audience with the Queen at Windsor Castle. She'll hold rather different talks with the Prime Minister at Chequers, his official country residence in Buckinghamshire. Boris Johnson's spokesman said the PM and the Chancellor would discuss COVID travel restrictions. Mr Johnson's under pressure to challenge Germany's insistence that fully vaccinated Britons must quarantine for 14 days.
Foreign dignitaries have arrived in Lusaka to attend the state memorial for Zambia's first president, Kenneth Kaunda. The giant of African nationalism died last month at the age of 97. The military has flown the liberation hero's remains to Zambia's 10 regions to allow the public to pay their last respects. Zambia's current president, Edgar Lungu, has declared public holidays for the day of the memorial and next week's funeral. That's the latest BBC News.
天天在一起，天天用心听，听见台北的声音。FM 93.1，幸福永远属于你。
公民总主笔，
方恩格时间。
谁当家？
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 你当家？
谁当家？谁当家？
谁当家？
谁当家？我当家。你当家？我当家。
我当家。
到底谁当家？你来当家。
To Residence Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station. I'm your host, Ross Darrell Feingold. Our very special guest today is Dr. Grace Shen. Doctor, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thank you, Doctor. Oh, thank you, Ross.
You're the doctor. I'm not the doctor.
That just flowed really, really naturally. Yes, thank you. Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you, especially, this time when people are so worried about their health. So we'll talk about health in general and health during work at home. And we'll talk a little bit about women's health as well, because of your background as a OBGYN,
yes.
Who's worked throughout the world, Canada, US, and Taiwan. But before we talk about women's health and cosmetics, aesthetics, and staying healthy, tell us a bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up?
Actually, I grew up in Vancouver. I moved back to Taiwan after I graduated from high school, which was about 19, I believe. That's a little while back. So yeah, and then I've been here since then, and I did most of my practice here. And I did a little bit internship and a postgrad year after I got my licensing here in Taiwan, and I did a little bit back in the States and also back in Vancouver. So I got a little picture of all the places I've been. But so far, yeah, right now I'm based in Taiwan now. So.
What age did you decide you want to be a doctor? Because, that's one of those professions that people often decide when they're really, really young, either because there was a family member or they saw a TV show, and there are so many TV shows about doctors or at hospitals. What was your path to deciding that you wanted to be a doctor?
I remember like ER and Dr. House and everything else, but no, because
George Clooney.
Oh yes, he's super hot. Well, for me, it was actually because I grew up in a family of doctors. So since my grandparents, my grandpa, and a lot of his relatives are doctors. So I was basically raised in a family of doctors. So ever since, from my first memories, it was like my mom, my dad would always tell me, you're gonna grow up to be a doctor. I'm like, what is a doctor? Like, for me, it was like, what? And then when I got older, it was more like a family thing, because I'm the youngest in the family. So everybody else in front of me, they've all gone to med school and whatnot, or dental. So then it was sort of like a logical thing for everybody in the family to be a doctor.
Did you consider anything else?
That's a funny question, because a lot of people asked me that just a couple of weeks back. So my friend's like, hey, so what do you do? Like, I mean, if you were not a doctor, have you ever thought about something else you'd do? And I'm like, honestly, that question really hit me, because I actually thought about it for a little while. I'm like, you know what? I actually wouldn't know what I would do if I'm not a doctor, because I've been raised that way. So that was pretty much the first information that I got. So everything through my academic years, I'm like, for like science and math and everything had to be like, I got a lot of pressure from my family, but my mom was not that strict on me. But in general, because everybody else in the family were a doctor, so it seemed like, I didn't want to look like I'm the only one that's not, like I'm going rogue. But then I guess it just kind of flowed. And then when I hit I was in middle school, then I sort of felt like, what, maybe it is pretty good to be a doctor. It's relatively stable, and then it feels like a comfort zone for me, because everybody is here. So then I'm like, okay, you know what, let's give it a shot. And I realized I actually do like it through like bio lab, like dissecting frogs, rabbits, whatnot, So then I realized my interest is still based in medical field, so which was really good. So because some people in my family, they were raised pretty much the same way I was, but they're not a fan of being a doctor. So for them, it was actually not a pleasant experience for them. But then we all still end up being doctors. But the fact that I'm really, really I feel really blessed, because I really love my job. So I feel like every day when I go to work, I'm really, really happy. But as of some of my family members, where they're not a big fan of doctors themselves, I mean, they're doing it for their daily necessity. They need to work for money, and I do work to have a steady job. But then for them, they're not so keen to go to work every day. They're like, oh my God, to go to work again, because it's like a lifetime thing for us, as doctors. So we go through practice and everything else. So then it's pretty much not all we know, but then like most of our focus is here. So that if you're not interested in this field, I can totally understand how that could be a really big pressure for you, though. Yeah.
How much of that is related to the education process, and specifically for medical doctors here in Taiwan? Looking back at your own education experience, what was fun about going to medical school? What was wrong about going to medical school? You said for some people, it puts them on a path of it's a job, but not a passion.
That's true.
Tell us a little bit about the education process.
Okay, honestly, for me, because I was raised in Vancouver, so then for me, moving back was a huge challenge for me. I remember I was going through a huge, I was in a war with my family. I ran away from home. I didn't want to come back, because for me, I've never...
When you were in medical school, you ran away from home?
No, right before I came back. So we had a huge, a family, this thing, because everybody knew I didn't really want to come back. First of all, because I didn't grow up here, so I had no friends here. And then back then, my Chinese was really, really bad. I hardly spoke anything. I could sort of understand, but for me, that was like foreign language for me. So then it was really hard. So then, but all my family were here. So then for me, I felt like, my mom has raised me to this age. So then I came back with them. So I remember first 3 years in med school was literally hell for me, because I didn't understand what everyone was saying. But one good thing is all of our books are in English. So that was a good thing. But then I couldn't use anything else outside the text, because they're all in Chinese. And back in the day, this is 15 years ago, we still didn't have a lot of stuff that's on the computer. So we have to basically have everything handwritten, from our lab reports to whatnot, your notes and everything. So that was a huge challenge for me. And then all my family, although they're in Taiwan, but they're not based in Taipei. So I was living in the dorms when I first came back for the first 3 years. So I remember my roommates were in fear of me, because when it was getting dark, I would start crying, because I get homesick. Because I literally had no friends. So I was really close with my roommates. That was a good thing, though. But what I noticed really, really different about the educational system in Taiwan as opposed to North America is that everybody seems to be so... Not that we're not studious, but then everyone's so good with testing. All the exams we go through, because in med school we get a lot of pop quizzes and then midterms and whatnot, and whichever prof they'd like to give exams, like, after class, they'd give a little pop quiz. But then it just seemed like everybody's just getting everything. I'm like, how come I don't understand? Are we studying through the same thing? But then after a while, you realize it's basically how they're raised. So ever since you're maybe in elementary school, you're so used to the fact that every single class you're supposed to have something, a take-home message. And then you have to have a pop quiz, probably not today, or you're going to have a day after. So for us, that's very different, because in North America, it was more like, we grow up happily, or we play and then we learn as we go. It's more like no pressure. But in Taiwan, because they're raised this way, even if you hit med school, technically I think it's the other way around. In North America, it's not as well, I guess I wouldn't say not as strict, but unless you're going to private school, or else there's not a lot of pressure for you in school. But then as opposed to when you get to college, you're pretty much free. But then if you don't do well in class, you get flunked, you get kicked out a lot. But in Taiwan, it's the other way around. So you get pressured, a lot of pressure in elementary school, middle school, all the way to high school. And then you go to a lot of classes and whatnot. So that it's almost like reflex. So right away, the prof is 3 hours of lecture and you know exactly where they're going for. But for us, this is so new to us. Like, it's more like, you have an open questions. Like, so what did you do today? And then as opposed to teachers in Taiwan, okay, today you're going to do something. They give you like a order and you just do what you're told. But for us, so I have inside of me, I have this really, really rebellious soul. So whatever people tell me, like, why? I always like to question, not because I like to, but I'm like, but why? Isn't there another answer, maybe another option? But most kids in Taiwan, they're raised, like I see my daughter right now, she's going to kindergarten. It's pretty much the same thing. You're told what to do. Like, this is the curriculum you do. And then you're never really given the option of why, or why are we doing this? And so I raised my daughter the way I remembered. So she asked tons of questions, which is kind of funny though. But I think that's the really, really big difference between the whole educational system, which I am also really, really right now. I'm still trying to get through all this, because my daughter's getting older. She's going to school. So for this whole educational system is so new to me too. Even though I've been back for so long, it's still so new, like the whole system and everything.
Now, somebody who didn't grow up here in Taiwan, and you said you had some language challenges, which I can imagine would be very challenging with the medical terms, because that's not like everyday Mandarin or everyday Taiwanese dialect, kind of specialized terms. What happened the first time they let you as a student interact with patients? What was that like? Okay, so the whole medical system in Taiwan, it works pretty much like, now there's a little bit of modification. So you go through the first 4 years, 4 to 4.5 years of med school, and then you go for clerkship and internship. So before then, when I hit about fourth year, I had okay dialect, but reading and writing was a hard thing for me. So in the hospital, when you're in contact with the patients, which is okay because you do a lot of talking as opposed to typing. And then the good thing is, when I started working in the hospital, the computer system were updating. So a lot of the charts and all the stuff we had, the data, they were all in the computer. So which was a good thing for me. But then before that was a crazy challenge. So one thing I really feared were patients asking me, because all of our diagnosis and all of our charts are all in English. So there was a couple of years in between where there were like laws, people going on protests because they wanted Chinese written documents, because they're like, you give me all these paperwork, but I don't understand what's in there. So there was a few years where like, oh my God, if they're all going to be in Chinese, I think I'm going to die, because I can't, I could read, like if it's not too hard, but if it's not, like I have to translate everything into Chinese, which was a huge challenge for me, because for me, Chinese to English is probably not as English to Chinese is probably not as hard as the other way around. So what I really fear were patients ask me, so Dr. Grace, I'm diagnosed with what is it in Chinese? So I have to give the diagnosis in Chinese, and I'll be like, okay, just give me a second. Did you give the right one?
So then what do I usually do? I'm like, okay, give me a second. Let me go check your data from this morning, and I'll just get back right to you. And I would go down and Google it. And, okay, and I jot it down in Chinese really quick. So when they talk to me, I totally understand, but the fact that I have to write it down, it's just really hard, which is, I think, very, very interesting about the language of Chinese. Like, that's why I encourage like a lot of my friends, foreigners, like if you want to learn, I think Mandarin is probably something you want to start with, because Chinese writing is very, very hard, even if you can speak it or understand it. But the fact that you have to write it, or even write like a short paraphrase or whatnot, it's very, very hard. I mean, the writing, the character, even now when I write, it's so funny. Whenever I write, people are like, oh, you're a foreigner, aren't you? I'm like, is that obvious? Like, my words are all like round and squiggly.
What did the nurses think of you at the time? You know, this young doctor who kind of looks like she's from here, but doesn't sound or speak or write like she's from here.
Okay, honestly, when I was in the hospital, I mean, this is sort of like the vibe here in Taiwan too, because for most people, when you go to the hospital, you see doctors, but then there's a huge proportion of nurses. But I know in North America, there's actually a high percentage of male nurses, but in Taiwan, it's actually not as much, and it's actually rare for boys to go through nursing school. But we actually need a lot of those, but and in reality, usually in the hospital, there's a ton of female nurses. So when you work with a bunch of females, and they're like, because they probably didn't even get to know you, they're just like, why don't you understand? So I'd be asking a lot of questions. So when I was going through clerkship and internship, that was actually pretty hard for me, because they would actually give me a hard time. Not that they want to, but they were like, why are you asking so many questions? And then I would constantly be making mistakes because I didn't understand. And then I would have to go to my senior classmen or ask my coworkers.
Or go back to Google.
Yes, go back to Google. And I would like type everything. And back then there were no scanning, so I'm like, okay, so this word looks like, okay, let's just try to Google that. Okay, that looks kind of like this. Okay, let's try to piece the pieces together. And then gradually, but that's kind of the funny thing though, because of that 2 years, it actually made me grew tremendously, because you're on your own, right? So you're like, survival. You're like, okay, I gotta live through this.
So even though you were on your own, looking back at that time though, was there a nurse or a doctor, someone more experienced who gave you some advice that really helped you, or that you remember, a more experienced medical professional who gave you some wisdom that you remembered throughout your career?
Yes, the first person I would say was actually probably definitely my husband, because I met him right when I graduated. So I met him when I was going on to fifth year, which for us back then, because now they have a new curriculum. Back then we do 5 years of med school and then 2 years of clerkship and internship, like one each. But then now they do it different. It's just 4+2. It's a little different. But back then, when I was just finishing off from school, I met my husband. So then, because he's 7 years older than me, so he'd be like a senior classman for me. So I would a lot of my questions I would go to him, so which is very, very I guess convenient in a sense, and because he's a lot older and because he's also a surgeon, so for me that helped a lot. Even though maybe when I'm at work and people are not as friendly, not that they're not friendly, it's because in the hospital you're going at a very fast pace. You can't always grab people like, hey, help me, we're going through CPR, you're helping me, hold on, I can't help you right now. So then I would jot down my questions, and I would go back and ask my husband. So he's actually a huge mentor for me, and also in picking my specialty as well. So like when we went through all the specialties, I knew I didn't want to be in internal meds, and I'm like, okay, so if I want to be a surgeon, what kind of surgeon would I want to be? So because in Taiwan, and I'm sure in North America as well, we have very they're cut into very, very fragmented specialties. So then even if I do general surgery, I would have to go down to maybe procto, or I do like CVS or whatnot, or like into like neural. So then for me, I went through all. My husband spent a lot. Oh, now he's my husband. Yeah, back then boyfriend. So then he would actually sit down with me and then ask me all these questions, like do you have interest in this field and about this field, and would you prefer doing this or that? And then so it helped me pick my specialty actually, and also, but partially also because my family. My grandpa was a OB-GYN, so then I wanted to do the same. And for me, one of the big reasons I picked gynecology and OBS was because I like the fact that I'm bringing new life. Because for a lot of us, like especially we're doing a lot of work in the hospital. Basic stuff we do, one of the things we have to send off our patients, and for me that was not a thing that I really liked, but it's something we had to do. So then when I sat down, I thought about what I want to do for the rest of my life. I'm like, I don't really like the fact that, so I didn't like oncology. I didn't like being in the oncology ward or hospice. For me that was just too tormenting, because I'm a really, really happy person, so for me that was too much pressure. So then I figured, I'm not very good with kids, but I like new life, so I picked OB-GYN for that reason, because I feel like bringing new life is always a very, very happy thing for me. So I guess so my mentor would probably number one would be my husband. Yes. He helped me throughout the way up until now.
You also spent some time working in hospitals. Yes. In North America.
Oh, yes.
How does that experience differ from working in the hospitals in Taiwan for you?
That was an eye-opener, actually. So, because I grew up in Vancouver, and I did some time in the States too. But then for me in Taiwan, all my medical studies were done in Taiwan. So when I first went to the States actually I went to back to Vancouver first. I did a couple months there. For me, that was a little bit shocking because of the amount of patients. Because in Taiwan, probably because Ross, you've been here for a while, you probably know. Because if you go in the hospital, you'll realize, and before COVID, it'd be packed with people. So that it's regular for us to go through an OPD clinic every single day. We have over 100 patients. But if you go back to North America, the maximum, even when I remember when I was a kid, I'd go to my family physician and she's like, oh, I'm fully booked today. And then you run down her list, there's like 15. Like, what? 15? You're fully booked? What? But that's the big difference between here and back in North America. I'm not saying which is better, but honestly, if you had a lot more time to deal with each and one of your patients, I mean, that was definitely, there would be less misunderstanding, and then all your patients would feel like, they're treated the same way. But then I guess it's the whole health system is very, very different. So that for me was very, very shocking. Besides everything else, I think that's the big thing. So when I was doing internship, my friends came back from Vancouver to visit me, and then I took them to, I remember I was on call and I was on duty. So I brought them to work, and then they went through one day, and then they saw what I was doing, and I was running in and out of the wards, picking up phone calls and delivering babies and whatnot. And then they went home and they texted me like, I would never want to be a doctor in Taiwan. It's like, I can't believe how you lived through this. And then they're like, so you're on call today. You're off tomorrow, right? I'm like, no, what? No. What? Because usually in North America, they have like strict hours. I mean, in Taiwan, technically we do, but then we're basically tied down because we have responsibilities. I mean, these are all your patients. So if you're not done with them, usually we wouldn't leave. So it's for us, we'd feel like we have to stay and finish all that. But not saying that in North America, as doctors don't do that, but because the number of patients they care for, the proportion is not the same. So I guess life quality wise is a lot better.
Yeah, a few weeks ago, I won't say the name, but I walked by a doctor's office, a gynecologist in Taipei, and it actually said in the sign, like, I deliver babies on Sundays.
Yes. Yes. So in Taiwan, there's I think it's a cultural thing. Like, if you had cesarean section, if you went on surgery, have a baby, you can actually book a time. But I know in North America, that's not something they would actually.
Well, they'll just send you a much bigger bill. They'll still come and do the work.
Yes, that's true. That's one thing too. But usually, I guess with North American people, they don't have a thing for. I guess it's like feng shui sort of thing. So you go for fortune telling. They tell you, oh, this time if your baby is delivered now, they have a really, really good life afterwards. So for North American people, they're like, what? That doesn't make much sense.
Surely you don't endorse that, doctor.
Yeah. So then we'd have to wake up 3 a.m., 5 a.m. in the morning to deliver babies.
So you do this?
Oh, we do. Because in Taiwan, it's like a cultural thing, right? So, I mean, now there's extra fees you pay, but equivalent to the time we devote, it's just not proportional. I'm not saying you're like, come on, I got to pay me more. No. It's just the fact that life quality-wise for doctors is not really fair because we're working long hours. So what I was saying about being on call, because North American, when I was working in the States or in back in Vancouver, you realize if you're on call today, next day you're off before 12 o'clock. So they want the doctors or any medical facility people, anybody working in there to have enough time to rest. If you're working overtime, you're so tired, your mind can't process properly. So that's a huge difference. So for me, I'm like, oh my God, you can go home after on call? For us, it's like we're working 5 days straight, nonstop. I remember one of the things my patient told me, I was still in the ward, and I had 3 moms that were delivering. So the first day I delivered the one in the middle, and then so the other 2 were still waiting. So I would come in and check on them at night. And then it was the first day, second day. On the third day, finally the husband he just couldn't bear it. He's like, excuse me, I see you here every single day, like day and night. When do you sleep? I'm like, don't worry. Don't trust me. Tomorrow, the day after, it's still me. But don't worry, I'll find time to sleep. And he's like, how can you guys live with this? Like you don't, like you hardly sleep, and they're calling. I'm running in and out of wards, not just them, but also carrying other patients too. So for a lot of patients, they see working long hours, but it's almost like it's a normal thing. It's a new norm. It's like, but in North America, they're like, no, that's just absurd. Like there's a certain amount of time you need off. But in Taiwan, I guess that's sort of the gray zone. I mean, even though there's a lot of protests and people going on, maybe throwing paper documents, like this is not fair. This is not good for the doctors. But because it's been going on for the past maybe 50 years, it's always been like that. So it's hard to change. And it's sort of just cultural thing. So I have friends, when they moved to Vancouver in the first place, I remember I was still living there. They were like, oh my God, I can't believe it's so hard to see a doctor here. Well, yes, apparently you're in North America. Not that the facility itself is not good, but the ratio. So I remember I had a car accident when I went back to Vancouver about third year in med school. And then I was in between a small town. I was in a car crash. So I was tied down on a stretcher, and then because my fingers were numb. So the first thing they hear that your fingers are numb, they tie you down because it's probably a cervical injury. So I was tied down about 3 hours. I'm like, can I get up and go pee? They're like, oh no, I can't touch you right now, because if you get off, then if we let you off, then it would be our responsibility. So I'm like, okay. So I'm like, where's the doctor? I mean, they check their watch. Oh, the doctors won't be here about 2.5 hours. I'm like, I've been here for 3 hours. 2.5? Don't you have any doctors on call? Oh yes, he's on call, so he won't be here for another 2.5 hours. I'm like, oh my God, I think I'm gonna die. And there was like a little boy, his arm broke off, and he was literally, I think he was hit by something, and then there was injury, he was bleeding, and his arm was literally draping off his shoulders, and then he was crying. I'm like, can somebody please take a look at that boy? Like, oh, we can't touch him at the moment, the doctor's not here. So for me, that was huge cultural shock. I was like, what? Because in Taiwan, I'm sure probably Ross, would you probably, because you've been here for a while, you probably
I try to stay out of hospitals, doctor.
That's good though.
That's my policy. I stay away from hospitals.
But then you could actually literally run into hospitals or ERs, and then they would treat you. But if in North America, that's a huge difference. You can't just run into the ER unless it's life and death. If you're just, you have a cramping pain, you go in there like, just get a family physician or call into a booth or something. So that's the very, very big difference. So a lot of patients in town, they're so used to that. So now like COVID right now. So I think, it's not fair, but I still got to speak up for our medical personnel. So we're working long hours. We're trying to help everybody. Even with the unfair treatment and hours we get, but we still want to go through all the patients we have. And so we just hope patients would give us a little bit more understanding and consideration, because we do care just as much as all these patients to us are all very, very, very important. But I guess they're so used to everybody come in, you should get to me quick. I'm not getting treated. Why? And then occasionally be like, you know what? Let's try to get you into one of the medical facilities in North America and see how you feel about that.
Right. So the patients in Taiwan, they need to learn how to be patient during this time.
Yes.
Is that the key message?
Yes, pretty much. They need to be patient.
What are the most common issues that you see as a gynecologist here in Taiwan?
Well, I guess there's not as many babies now. That's a big problem.
You need more work. Got it. Well, my girlfriend's eager to have a baby, so hopefully, we'll get on that road soon.
I hope to hear good news from you soon, though. But one big thing in Taiwan, I guess it's not a Taiwan thing, it's a global thing. Women are having babies at a later age now, which is a problem. Back maybe 10 years ago, that wasn't a problem. But for recent years, it's becoming a big problem, because the age that women have their first baby is postponing from maybe 25 to 30. Now, on regular basis, they have kids when they're 40. So there is a problem for that, because there's a high chance of maybe a mutation or a miscarriage, right? So for us, it's very challenging. And also Taiwan right now, we're ranking number one on the bottom. We have the world lowest birth rates. So for that part is very challenging for us. But we have a new protocol that just came on yesterday on July 1st. So it's for IVFs. So if you want to have, if you're older and maybe if you're not adequate for pregnancy, or maybe your ovaries, you're not working too well, or you're functioning not well, and your husband's sperm, whatnot, you could also do an IVF. And then there's government support, which is very good. Very good. It's the new thing.
We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll talk more about these issues and COVID-19. Our guest today is Dr. Grace. You're listening to Residence Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station.
长照服务需求、长照特别扣除额问题，请拨打1966长照专线，5分钟内通话免付费。一通电话让长期照顾管理专员协助申请长期照顾服务及解答长期照顾特别扣除额相关问题。以上内容由台北市政府卫生局提供。
爸爸应酬不开车，黄色嘟嘟安全多。应酬喝酒不过量，安全回家最上道。爸爸要平安回家哦。
喝酒不开车，开车不喝酒哦。让我们一起尊重生命，拥抱亲情。
亲爱的民众，提醒您定期清除排油烟机内部油垢。烹煮食物时，切忌分心做其他事情，并注意人离火熄。且厨房附近应设置灭火器，操作时保持适当距离。当厨房火灾时，严禁以水灭火。油锅起火也千万不要移动油锅，以免翻覆造成火势扩大延烧。以上内容由台北市政府消防局提供。
亲爱的朋友，您还在吸烟吗？快拿着健保卡到戒烟门诊或拨打戒烟专线0800636363。提醒您，最近兴起的电子烟、加热烟，因为没有浓浓的烟臭味，就被认为无害。其实已经证实，新兴烟品都有二手烟及三手烟的危害，甚至还有爆炸的风险。我是义工蔡依林，所有烟品都 get out。我拒烟，我骄傲。
我是疾管署防疫师陈婉清。防疫期间，如果您是正在居家隔离或检疫的民众，请留在家中或隔离检疫场所，不可随意外出。若您在隔离检疫期间出现发烧、嗅味觉异常、腹泻、呼吸道症状或身体不适，请佩戴口罩，联系卫生局或1922，并依指示就医，不可自行搭乘大众运输。如果您有洗牙、健检等非紧急医疗需求，请先暂缓延后。
有政府，请安心。资讯由疾管署提供。
大家好，我是防疫车队的司机汪佑廷。我是一位专业的驾驶，在防疫期间负责将入境台湾的旅客平安送往检疫地点。作为防疫车队的驾驶，必须接受完整的防疫教育训练，确实做好个人防护措施，定时消毒车内环境，保护旅客及自己的健康。接种公费 COVID-19 疫苗后，不仅让我更安心执行每一次接送任务，也让家人更放心支持我的工作。
有政府，请安心。资讯由疾管署提供。
家己电台家己主持咧。大家好，我是郭文铁，我伫台北广播电台。
谁当家？
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 你当家？
谁当家？谁当家？
谁当家？
谁当家？我当家。你当家？我当家。
我当家。
到底谁当家？你来当家。
Welcome back to Residence Message here. Our guest today is Dr. Grace Shen. Doctor, we were talking before the break about common questions or issues with women, and you said you're seeing a lot of patients who are older and getting pregnant, so that's becoming increasingly common. But let's change the question a bit. What's kind of like an informal, when people meet you at like a social event or at the gym or other moms at school, like what are some of the informal questions that women grab you and say, "Oh, doctor, I just have to ask you about something."
Two most common questions I get. Number one is, how come I get infected so much? Like infection or whatnot, because in Taiwan it's humid and it's hot, so that's one of the things. Like 10 women that come to me, 9.5 that ask me the same question: how come I constantly get infected, whatnot, and what can I do to prevent it? And second of all is, most moms like to ask me, is there any way to rejuvenate myself to get vaginal tightening, whatnot? Is there like procedure I can do from laser to non-invasive or to maybe surgical procedure? So these two are the most common questions I get, even with my friends or patients or just any people that come to me and realize I'm a doctor, I'm an OB-GYN. Oh my God, can you tell me what I can eat or how to keep myself healthy?
Well, I was just gonna say in response to these common questions, I mean, there's no easy answer. You can't just tell them like, yeah, drink more of this or something, right? I mean, the only answer is make an appointment, right?
Exactly. I'm like, of all these things I'm telling you, it's better for you to just drop in my clinic. I'll take a look at you and I'll tell you. Because one thing in Taiwan is there's a lot of traditional, not just traditional medicine, but traditional ideas and concept where you can use some kind of herbs or like, from like what you eat, you can make your body better.
And be careful, doctor, because we love the traditional medicine,
I love
right?
Yeah. Because my mom is actually on traditional medicine. So I love that field. But because of that, sometimes they delay their treatment because they think, oh, my neighbors told me there's this really, really nice, probably like some kind of med or like herbs they take. I mean, not saying that it's bad, but sometimes because of these info, all these stuff they get from neighbors or friends or moms and aunts or whatnot, they delay their treatment. So what originally could be a very, very simple treatment from maybe just a little bit of antibiotics or whatnot, or even just, pills you can just take home. And then they probably postpone their treatment maybe halfway down the road and they're hospitalized. Sometimes even infected, sometimes even septical, and they might be even dying from their originally might be a small event. So which is kind of irritating for some of us. So we're constantly telling our patients, no, these are ideas, but right now you're sick. So there's a reason that doctors are here. You come to us, please come to us. I'm open for you, please come to me. So then that's the thing, we've been educating our patients a lot. So we do go through a lot of programs. We do a lot of educational stuff in our ward or in the hospital on the first floor. We'd have like little meetings teaching people, like if you see symptoms like this, or you see like discharge like this, or you get symptom signs like this, please come and visit a doctor. Do not just go to the pharmacy. So that's also another thing in Taiwan, because in pharmacies in North America, they're really, really strict with over-counter the drugs. So most of antibiotics you can't get in drugstores, but in Taiwan it's a little different. So if you have prescription or some of the minimum, like the really, really simple antibiotics, you can still get in probably in pharmacies or in traditional medicine, which is also a problem. So sometimes a little infection, you take all these medicines, it will die off, but it's not treated the right way. So then that way it will come back to you again. So then my patients would constantly ask me, why am I always getting infected all the time? And I'll throw the question back at them. So do you finish all your meds? And they'd be like, yeah, they give me medicine 3 to 5 days. I'm like, do you finish all of them? Yeah, I'm through the 3rd day and I feel like I'm better on the 4th, so I just stop. Like, why? Because I feel like I'm better. I'm like, that's the problem, right? That's the problem, because you're not through a full treatment. So they would go on and on and on and on. So 3 or 4 days, they stop the med. So then maybe because they've eased down most of the infection, but not all. So there's a little bit still in there. So then if you're tired, your immune system is not working too well, it kicks in again. So they feel like entire year, they're like, I'm going to the doctor every single day. Why? So that's another thing we've been telling our patients. There's a reason we prescribe you medicine for a certain amount of days and the way to take it, because that's the way it's going to help cure whatever you have. So that's the thing we need to tell our patients. Because in North America, I think patients are more obedient in a sense. They tell you, okay, this medicine you take like this, like this, like this. And then they wouldn't challenge you. But in Taiwan, because it's almost like we say it, like for our coworkers, we always make fun of ourselves. Hospitals in Taiwan or clinics in Taiwan are even more common than 7-Elevens. So they literally go hospital shopping. So you go through all different clinics or hospitals, and then if you don't get what you want here, maybe there's other places they can get what you want. So that's becoming a vicious cycle, which is not good. But also
everywhere you go, doctor, they give you a litlittle bag of different colored pills. Yes. So maybe the patients feel, okay, I'll take it for a couple of days, but then they give up because they know the next doctor is going to give them another bag of pills.
Because usually what we tell them is like, if like for you, for instance, like you come in, not for you, but if you come in for an
I'm definitely not coming to the gynecologist.
Yes. But then let's say we give you a prescribed drug, and then you go on to the next one. The next doctor, we usually ask you, did you go to another doctor for a prior treatment? If you do, what kind of meds do you have? If you don't have it, usually we'd ask you to stop it because we're afraid you might be taking the same meds twice, which is not good. So I guess that's been a problem for as long as we can remember. But I guess just the thing, hopefully someone can hop in near, and some of the politicians can come in and just fix that. But that's been a while, so that's going to be a long journey.
What about after childbirth? And you have experience. You say your mother's a traditional doctor, and you've worked in North America and here as well. What about the convalescence? And is that something that's going to continue with modern younger people as well, or do you think as Taiwan becomes a more international modern society, something as traditional as that will fall away and people will follow the North American model where they go right back to working out and and going to work.
It's always a thing I get in my OPD clinics. Like the problem is they would come in because nowadays we're more open, right? We're more connected to the world. So we have like people come in and they study abroad, or they have their partners that they're probably studying abroad, or maybe foreigners. So they come in, they'll be like, "What convalescence? What does that all mean? Like why?" So I had a really close friend. So she had a baby about 3 months ago, and then she was like, right before she popped her baby, her husband's like, "Oh my God, I really want to go somewhere for you. I want to go to the beach and whatnot." But she was pregnant, so she can't get on the plane. So it was like a week after her delivery, her husband was like, "Come on, let's go to the beach." And then they took him down because they're in Taichung, and then they went down to the harbor. And then her mom went ballistic, of course, like, "Dude, you just had a baby. How can you be out? There's wind, blah, blah, blah." And then her husband is like, "What? Why? This makes no sense." But for me, because
well, let's get right to it. What does make sense?
Technically, I guess it's also because of our body, because we're raised in Taiwan. I guess your body's more prone to like the environment. So I guess the food we eat. So I guess convalescence is still a thing if you're in Taiwan, and whether it's good or bad, I guess it's more of a mindset thing. Like if you feel like you feel comfortable and you feel like you're going to be better that way, then I'm still open for that. And because my mom is traditional medicine, so she raised me that way. So I'm like, I do believe traditional medicine has a role in this. It does. But the fact that you have to go through a month, maybe some people go for 2.5 months. So the necessity of that, I honestly believe you need to have a little bit of rest depending on what kind of delivery you had. But for 1 whole month to 2 months, I really think it really depends on how everyone's healing. I wouldn't say a yes or a no, but I would actually, so usually what I do, I talk to my patients, and if they're really, really like, I really don't want to do this, can you please persuade my family? Then I would help them do that. I'll be, you know what, it's not a big deal. It's actually okay as long as you're not feeling well. I mean, you're feeling well, and then if you're feeling uncomfortable, please just remember to rest, and you'll be fine. But for the most part, because we're in Taiwan, so like 80% of people are going to come crashing down on you. Like, what? No, don't tell her that. No, that's not right. You're like, whoa, calm down. No. Hello, are you the doctor or I'm the doctor?
So the grandparents call you up and say, like, how can you tell my daughter
that
it's safe to go out?
Exactly. They come and barge in my work. What? Did you just tell her she doesn't need to stay indoor? That is absurd. I'm like, no. I'm saying it's a suggestion, but if you guys feel like it's not right, I mean, I'm totally open for both kinds, but then what I really do is I respect the mom, because what the mom is going through is what is most significant for me. So if she feels like this is time me down, I want to get out, I would tell her, you know what, just let her go out for a while. It's not going to kill her. Okay, she had a baby. Give her a break. Okay.
Yeah, people have been having babies for a long time without staying inside.
They were out in the wilderness. There was no house, and they lived there for 200-300 years. I'm sure she'll be fine.
Doctor, you also do some work in cosmetics and aesthetics. For those of us who don't, we're just naturally good looking. We don't need to do this too. Yeah, thanks. Tell us what's the difference between cosmetics and aesthetics.
Okay, cosmetic aesthetics. Cosmetic aesthetics are more minimally invasive, so they're more like injections and fillers as opposed to surgery. So if we hit surgery, then that we feel the plastic surgeon or surgeon in general. So usually what people do, they come in. Not a lot of people just come in barge. I want to get a nose job. I want a surgery for nose job. So they usually come in for some fillers. So that's where cosmetic aesthetics kick in. So it goes from like normal skincare to invasive fillers, and then beyond that would be plastic surgery. So nowadays I guess it's more of a trend thing. Starting from Korea, and then but for the past couple of years in Taiwan, it's actually been quite I guess it's changed quite a bit. Like, I mean, maybe 5 years ago, I remember people would come in, they were like, "Oh my God, don't tell people I've done anything," even from laser. Like, no, please, I don't want too much energy. It's gonna make me look so red. People are gonna think I did something. But up until now, everyone's like, "What? Come on, please give me more fillers." I'm like, what? Why? Because, dude, I paid for this. I want people to know I paid for this. I'm like, okay. So I guess there's a change. I guess the whole concept. I'm not saying it's good or not, but I guess I love to tell my patients, whatever you think is beautiful, what you think makes you feel comfortable and make you feel pretty. That's what matters to me. Because what I think is pretty may not be what you think is pretty. So I like talking to my patients a lot. So I know, like, we'll meet halfway, and then that's how our outcome is going to be good. So it might be from simple just aesthetics treatments to all the way to plastic surgery, where we go into surgery. We do actually more invasive procedures to make you look, more closer to what you want. But there are always like limits for every treatment. So I like to tell my patients in advance, like they would come in a photo with like maybe a really, really beautiful celebrity. I want to turn into her, can I? And I would look at my patient, I'd be like, you know what, there are limits. I mean, I would tell them honestly, because if I bloat myself, in the end, it's not going to be a happy ending. So I would like to tell my patients in advance. I mean, I like to tell them, usually what I like to do with my patients when they come in for treatments, I'm like, I like to give you like a boost up. I want to upgrade you, but not to turn you into somebody else, because you are what you are. But then I guess for now, a lot of the age group is lowering. Right now I have kids coming in from parents taking them when they're 15. I'm like, no, they're too young for that, because your bone, your structure is not ready. Maybe you're going to change a little bit. But you can see the whole age drop. Like, people are coming in at a younger age. They're more open to a lot of treatments, which I guess is good in the long run, because not for income wise, but for I guess people caring for what they look like. I mean, you feel more confident. I mean, I believe, because I have a lot of patients coming in because they feel confident. They don't feel comfortable looking the way they are, but when they get a little bit of touch up, they feel so confident. They go to interviews, they're like, wow, they feel great. So I guess it brings a lot of self-confidence. So for me, that brings a lot of pleasure and happiness when I see my patients walking out of my clinic and they're super happy with their treatment.
You said they're coming in at younger ages. What do the youngsters want? What are they looking for?
They
don't need fillers, I hope.
Actually, that's what I thought. But then because nowadays, a lot of people do a lot of streaming and online taking photos. So some girls, because we want to look good on camera, so you want to be very, very thin. But at the same time, you're thin. You can't control where your collagen wants to go, where all your fat and all your puffy stuff, or collagens want to go. So then when you get thin, same thing happens to your face. So your face caves in, and you're gonna have a little bit of wrinkles. So they want to take that all out. So what they want to do is they want to look exactly like what they look on the picture. Because right now there's a lot of photo editing apps. So what happens nowadays? I get a lot of comments. Like, dude, you guys do all these plastic surgeries or aesthetics and cosmetics, and then you look so pretty on photo, and when you pop up in person, you're like, whoa, who the heck are you? So they don't want this huge drop from the actual person and like on what they see online or just on broadcasting. So I guess what the younger girls they're looking for is more like a 1-to-1 ratio when I see you in a real person. So we try to go for that. And a lot of young girls are because they like to be on camera. So all the jaw lines, so they want to keep this whole face structure very, very sleek and slim. So then you would come in for like Botox every so often, or, for Ulthera, for some heat energy. So that keeps your face all tight. So I guess that's the thing. So I have friends in North America, they're like, oh my God, Asian girls look so young. Because I guess it's also because we get the cosmetics that intercept at a younger age. So then we start doing this at a younger age. Because for myself, I remember I got my Botox when I was 19. So for me, it was really young. But for a lot of my friends in North America, they're like, what? Who the heck needs Botox at 19? I didn't get my first Botox injection until I was like 35. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I guess the concept is a little different. But I guess in North America, the age is sort of decreasing a little bit too, because I guess it's the Asian influence. So everyone looks so young. So I guess that's sort of the thing. But I guess it's good though. I always like telling my patients, there's a saying in our field is what age you start coming in contact with cosmetic and aesthetics or even plastic surgery, you're probably you're going to look that age for probably the next 30, 50 years, because you wouldn't tolerate yourself looking anything less than that. So you're going to be coming in. So that's why they're saying it's so addictive, because I could pay a little money and make myself look young. I mean, that's the thing. Like back in the Qing dynasty, everybody wants to live forever and look pretty all that. Like forever. So that's pretty much what's happening now. So everyone's trying to, buy themselves more time. I want to stay young and youthful forever. So that's the whole concept here. So I guess that's the main reason why the age is lowering. And also, I guess the pricing is coming down. So there's very competitive.
You mentioned earlier that a lot of this here in Asia began in Korea, or the notions of what to do. How does Taiwan compare, or Taipei compare to Seoul or other places that are known for this kind of medical tourism? I guess Bangkok's also well known as well. How does Taipei compare?
Taipei, I guess before COVID, it was actually thriving a little bit, because in Taiwan we do a lot of. It's similar to what we do in Korea, but the difference is because our bone structure, they're more. I guess they're originally from China, from Shandong. A lot of the Korean people, so they have a taller and more. I guess. They have a more, I wouldn't say masculine, but they have a more structural face. So it makes you look a lot bigger. So they shave down bones a lot. In Korea, they do a more invasive treatment as opposed to in Taiwan. Taiwanese people, they usually like to go for a more natural look. But there are exceptions. So I guess it's a little different now. So we've actually, before COVID, we have actually had foreigners coming from North America come in to learn how to do injections and fillers. So one thing I noticed was really interesting is fillers for foreheads, because most North American people don't do fillers for foreheads. It has something to do with our structures, because most Asian people, they have creasings on top of their eyebrow when they start to age. So you lose your collagen and your fat on your face. But for Caucasian, like for you, for instance, like see, even though you have a little bit of wrinkles, but you're still very, very puffed up here. So that's the difference. So when they come in, they do a lot of like forehead lifts, and then for a filler injection on the eye and above X section. So that's what we're really good at in Taiwan, because that's one thing we care about, especially now COVID. Everyone's like, only thing you see is your eyes. So you pretty much need a pretty beautiful first impression, which would be probably somewhere up here. And as opposed to in Korea, they're more into that cutting down bones, shaving down your whole structure in bones. So I guess we're more in our field in Taiwan. I guess what really stands out for us is that aspect where we can use fillers, and we could probably still get just as a probably not better, but just equivalent to the fact if maybe you have a surgery. And also because look-wise, because the more Korean look, you notice if I have friends that actually flew into Korea to get a full makeover. And you notice when they come back, they look very Korean. Yes, because you have Korean doctors doing it. So I have friends that went to Beverly Hills, and he got a chin, he got a implant for his chin, and he came back. I was like, okay, something about you just looked very funny, because most Caucasian, they have a more bigger structure, and he is not a big guy, so he has a huge chin looking like this. I'm like, okay, so let me just question you really quick. So this doctor that operated, he's a Caucasian. I'm like, okay, so that explains it. Not saying it's not pretty, it's just more of a structure for a Caucasian look. So I guess we all have our little the way we look at things. For Asian, we have an Asian look, so we have a Taiwanese look. So it's like you fly to different places, and you notice even though we're all Asians, we have a little bit of differences. So I guess that's what makes us a little different. Yeah.
Doctor, we're almost out of time. Can you give us one important health tip for COVID-19, whether for women or men and women?
Oh, please. Right now, just vaccine. If you guys get in line for vaccine, please go for it.
So we have the doctor's endorsement that the vaccines are safe to take, correct?
Yes, but obviously we have to survey you first. But then if we give you okay go, please just go for it. Because right now, the only thing right now we have for COVID, for stopping everything, is for everybody to get vaccinated, at least over 60 to 70%. That way, it might decrease the mortality rate. So please mask on and wash your hands and hygiene. And please, if you get in line for vaccine, please go for it. Because there's a lot of people out there wanting to get vaccinated, and they don't even have a chance. So if you get in line, please go, because that's probably what's going to maybe save you down the road. Because a lot of people are debating about the fact that, so what if I only get one vaccine? It's not going to protect me, but it will still cover you for maybe 50%. So you won't have the mortality rate will go down a little bit. So I know there's a lot of news and whatnot telling people, don't get this, don't get AZ, don't get that, or get Moderna. But I mean, for every doctor, we give you a prescription for a certain vaccine. There's a reason for it. So that's the thing too with medical in Taiwan. I always tell them, please trust your doctor. We wouldn't want to kill you. That's the last thing we want to do. So in North America, whatever the doctor tells you, they'll be like, okay, bingo, okay, we get it, capiche. But then in Taiwan, the first thing we give them the info, like, why? What? Are you sure? That's not what I Googled. That's the doctor Google tells me it's not like that. And we're like, what? Hello, there's a reason why we give you this, because not everybody is the same. And there's a reason we prescribe you a certain drug or a certain vaccine. So just right now, I still totally say the first health tip I give is just stay safe and please don't go out. And just listen to this radio station more often, right? Stay home, listen to the radio station, and get vaccinated and stay home.
And doctor, where can people find out more information about you?
You can actually Google my name online, and then you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. And also through my Facebook, you can link to our clinic, and you guys are really welcome to come by. And Ross, you too, I would definitely give a great discount if you come find me.
Thank you. Our guest today has been Dr. Gray Shen on Residence Messenger at Taipei Broadcasting Station. Have a great weekend.